Alright, let's do this fucking thing. Avatar live action Netflix show episode 1 review. Here we go. I didn't like it. That's probably an oversimplification. Mostly, it made me angry. Where do I even start? Okay, big fan of the classic series, was pretty skeptical art going into this show, but for some reason, maybe it was just I thought the trailers looked pretty good. It made me, I don't know, and also I just like talking about and thinking about Avatar. So like I kind of was like a little bit, at least kind of hopefully, I don't know. For some reason I was like kind of optimistic going into watching this, but it made me very angry. And it's not like actively extremely bad or anything, and there are many aspects of it that I think are done well, but the main thing that really fucking bugged me was that it's very close to the original series except for some minor differences, which the vast majority of are worse than the original show. Mostly, like, just the writing is not very good. And I found that extremely frustrating because, like, of all the things to fuck up, that should be the easiest one to get right because you already have a script that is good in the form of the original show. And here's the like catch-22 of doing a remake at all is like, do you change stuff a lot so that it's like a different thing, or do you try to be faithful and keep to the source material, right? Either way, you're probably going to piss someone off. But like what they do here is like very close. But every now and then they'll do like some things a little differently. The dialogue will be like rewritten, but the beats are like, they're like missing the beats that are important, and like they'll change. Okay, like I don't even know where to fucking start. Okay, I'll mention a couple things that I think are good. I think both the actors for Zuko and Sokka are really good. I think they're both excellently cast. I think they both give strong performances. I think they embody those characters very well. I've only seen the first episode. I don't know if I want to watch more because this made me so angry. Aang and Katara are not as good. And it's not, I'm hesitating to put it on the actors specifically because the actors are both children, and children are often not very good actors. I feel like we've been kind of blessed in recent years with like Stranger Things, and even stuff like Game of Thrones has like child actors that are all really, really good. And you forget that like usually child actors are bad, and that's not their fault. It's just that they're children. Like the kid playing Aang here, I think is not very good, but I don't really think it's his fault because I don't think the writing is there. And two, Aang is a like tricky character to pull off effectively. He's unlike Zuko, who has like a very clear goal and motivation. Aang is a lot more like nuanced. He has to come off like very childlike and fun-loving, but also be very wise and powerful, and dramatic when he needs to be too. He rides this really interesting line that is like, I imagine, extremely hard to find the balance between. Katara is also tricky because again, I think she's a little bit, her role is a lot more kind of nuanced. She's basically the mother figure of the group. However, she's also, a young teenage girl, and so she has to like step into this motherly role, forced upon her by the war that's going on. And it's like, it's a tricky, again, it's like a very tricky, very specific line to ride that I think is very tricky to do well. The thing about this series is that it really like emphasizes like how good the original show is, and it does so, and the original show does so much like good writing so effortlessly that it makes it seem easy. And then like I just like forgot that most things are badly written. like that's what this feels like. It's like there's so many little details that they like thought about in the original show, and then they like change things slightly in this version, and it's like actively worse because of those things. And it's like, did you guys just not think about it while writing? It's so strange. It's so strange to me, because like visually pretty much all the characters look like the characters. The set design, the production design, the costuming, I think all that stuff is really, really strong. I think the effects look decent, at least decent enough for, the budget of them being a Netflix show, which I think this show has a crazy budget, but even so, it is like what you're trying to do is very complicated. And that's the thing that's like throwing me is there's like obviously a lot of time and effort and work put into this show, and so I like kind of feel bad for some of the people involved, because it's just like so blatantly a slightly worse, like an inferior product, like just a worse version of Avatar. Like it's technically a pretty faithful adaptation, at least so far, but like it's not as good. Okay, let me get like a little more into like the specifics. So yeah, I think Sokka is pretty good. I think Zuko is really good. There's a couple moments of his performance that I really, really liked, like when he first sees the big blue laser that shoots up into the sky when Aang first appears, and he has this look on his face, and for like a split second he smiles. And I'm like, that's a really clever choice, because a big part of Zuko's drive to find and capture the Avatar is that it's the Avatar inadvertently gives Zuko hope, which they talk about which Iroh talks about in the original show, and like we see a little bit of a glimpse of that here. It's because Zuko's like he's like always angry and always like pissed off and stuff, but for like a brief split second he's like happy to have this like chance at redemption. It's good. It's a good performance. He did a good job. But then like with Aang, oh boy. Okay, so here's the first thing that really pissed me off. Aang can fly now. They fly now. They fly now? They fly now. If you're not familiar with Avatar, that might not seem like a crazy leap in abilities, but let me tell you, it fucking is. And like he could just fly. He could just fly around with his powers, with his airbending. Like it's not just like him doing a big jump or like lowering himself slowly. It's like, no, he can like go full straight up and then like move and change directions in air. He can fly. He's airbending, but he's flying. I could see people saying, well, he's an airbender. Of course he can fly around. He flies around all the time in the original show. No, Aang doesn't fly. Well, take Woody. What does Aang do?
That wasn't flying. That was falling with style.
That's fucking right. He's falling with style. Every time Aang moves around in the air, he's not flying. He's falling with style. He can glide on a glider, but he needs a glider to do that, and he can bend like the wind currents and stuff so that he's like essentially flying, but he still needs a fucking glider to do that. He needs to be aerodynamic for that to happen. Appa can fly, and Appa, the flying bison, is also technically an airbender. But Aang cannot fly. This is expanded upon further in The Legend of Korra, when we meet a airbender villain named Zahir, and he is like studied the airbenders and is like really into their philosophy. He's an anarchist, really cool villain, and there's a whole arc in that season where he's trying to unlock the ability to fly, which only like one other airbender in known history has been able to do. And it is a separate ability from just regular airbending, because that's not how fucking airbending works. And in order for him to achieve this ability, his girlfriend's face has to fucking explode, which allows him to let go of his earthly tether, enter the void, and become wind. And he like jumps off a cliff and then starts flying around. And everybody, including the airbenders, all freak out because this is an insane power level thing that they've never fucking seen before. The Avatar has occasionally kind of floated while in the Avatar state. So Aang has like kind of flown around, but only in the Avatar state. And in the Avatar state, he's like got all the powers of every previous life as an Avatar. It's like an insane power level boost. It's basically God mode. So like, yeah, he can fly around when doing that, but that doesn't count. That's Avatar shit.
Stuff. That doesn't count.
In this show, Aang just fucking flies around, just like regularly, without his glider, without Appa, just regular airbending, and he can fucking go all over, zip all over the place. And this is like this like actively makes the storytelling worse, because then it's like, well, why does Aang need a glider then, if he could just fucking fly around? Why does he need Appa then, if he could just fucking fly around? And it actively detracts from like the drama and tension in the show, because there's a scene where he's flying on his glider, and then Zuko shoots fire at him, and then he like falls off his glider, and he's falling from the sky, and he's like, oh no, and he's dramatically trying to reach for his glider, and it's like, oh no, he's falling. Is he gonna reach the ground in time? And there's zero tension at all, because it's like, just fucking fly. You could fly. Why are you like this? What is happening? It's like, why are you worried about that you dropped your glider? You could just fucking fly around. It's like really basic. It's like that kind of thing where like things are altered slightly, and then it's like they didn't think about it at all why it was like that in the first place. It's like, why did they change it? And there's like lots of those kind of things, and it made me very angry. Yeah, so like more on Aang, we open with what is in the original show like a flashback episode later on, where we see Aang hanging out at the air temple with Monkey Yatso and the other airbenders, and he is informed that he's to become the Avatar, and he runs away. And we do that sequence at the very start of the show, which changes up the pacing a little bit, but reordering those scenes isn't really a major problem. What gets me is that the way that they like change those scenes, and then like I think back to the original scenes, and like they're way better and set up all the themes of the show and Aang's character arc much better. So first of all, we also get a line about how they mentioned that Aang is one of the most powerful airbenders ever, and the youngest ever to get his master's tattoos, the arrow tattoos. Which, yes, we know that those are awarded to an airbender when they're considered a master of the craft. And so we know that Aang is really fucking good at airbending, and he is young. But at no point were they ever like, he's the best one ever. Because, and the problem with that is that it makes Aang feel like crazy powerful right out the gate. If he's the youngest one ever to become a master, and he can fucking fly around, then like, why does he need to become the Avatar? Seems like he's pretty fucking powerful all on his own without needing to learn any of the other elements. He even like kind of kicks the asses of all of Zuko's guys very easily. And yes, Aang is a powerful airbender and could probably beat them all one-on-one. But in the original show, like, there's like actual tension. Because like, that's in the original show, this is that his first confrontation with Zuko is the first time that Aang has ever been in a fight. And so he spends the majority of the fight just trying to avoid attacks, which is like airbending's whole philosophy is using the ebb and flow of the wind and using your opponent's energy against them. You rarely, if ever, like directly attack someone with airbending. That's not how the philosophy of it works. But here he could just like wipe them all out. It's like he's Mary Sue Aang. And, like, yes, he's a chosen one, and that's part of his power level and part of his whole vibe. But it's like, I don't really feel that he, like, I bet he could beat them. I bet he could fucking beat them. I bet he could beat the whole Fire Nation. I bet he could do it. I don't think he needs the other elements. So it's like, why? So then we do, like, the scene with Aang being told by Gyatso that he's the Avatar. and that he's got to do the thing. He's got to be the hero. And he doesn't want it. And that's pretty much the thing. And they do the line from Superman where he's like, can't I just pretend that I'm your son? And he's like, you are my son. It's that line, which is a nice moment. And it still works fairly well here, but it's a little more clunky because, like, Gyatso's not actually his dad, even though it's his father figure and the guy who raised him and stuff. So he's like, can't I just pretend that I'm your friend? And it sounds like they forgot. Like, it sounds like they wanted to just use the line from Superman, but had to, because he's not actually his dad, they can't, like, use this exact dialogue, so they change it slightly so it's technically right, but it comes off kind of clunky. Anyways, that's not the point I was going to complain about. The main thing is that they just it's functionally it's kind of the same, where Gyatso tells him you have to be the Avatar, and Aang's like, I just want to be a kid, which is Aang's whole fucking arc of season 1. Is he has a very distinct want and need. It's very basic but very good character writing when done well. Aang wants to just be a kid and have fun. But he needs to be the Avatar, the master of all four elements. This can bring balance to the world and stop the Fire Nation from genociding everyone. It's like a crazy burden to place on a 12-year-old kid. And yet he has to learn to step up to the plate and accomplish this. But he doesn't want to. He's just a kid. He just wants to fucking hang out with his friends and have fun. And that's what makes him a compelling character and a compelling, like, chosen one archetype. Is he doesn't want to be the chosen one, but he has to.
Why didn't you tell us you were the Avatar? Because I never wanted to be.
And, like, they basically say that in the live action show. In the original series, that specific theme and dichotomy of wanting to be a kid but having to grow up is, like, repeated again and again throughout this whole episode that, like, flashes back and shows him like this conflict that what he wants versus what he needs to become. When he's first told about being that he's the Avatar, they show him the monks show him these toys that he played with as a kid, as like a little kid, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember these toys, they were super fun. And the monks are like, no, you chose these toys specifically out of like 100. And the reason you did is because they were previous toys of past avatars. So they were connected to your past life. You chose them because they were familiar to you. And that's how we know that you are the next avatar. And apparently this is based on how they actually find the next Dalai Lama. So it's like got this real world Buddhism, I want to say Buddhism connection, but it's also just cool world building. At the same time, it's directly tied into the theme and the arc of Aang as a character. He just wants to play with these toys that he thinks are fun. But the world is telling him, no. Because you played with those toys specifically, now you have this great destiny and you have to become the savior of the world. It's like, he's like, no, I just want to be a kid. And the world is like, no, you have to become the chosen one. So, like, it's a cool world building thing that is not in the show, which is too bad. But it also, like, is a very direct, like, thematic metaphor for Aang's entire arc. And, like, I didn't even really think about that until the live action one where it didn't have it. So, like, it's that kind of stuff where it seems like a minor thing to change, but in reality it's like, oh well, but there was like really specific reasons that they did that in the first place, that they did it that way. And then this scene is followed directly by a scene of Aang wanting to play with the other airbenders. They're like playing a game, and the other airbenders are like, oh well, now that you're the Avatar, it wouldn't really be fair to whoever team you're on, so you can't play. And Aang's like, I just want to play and be a kid. And everyone else is telling him, well, now that you're the Avatar, you're not allowed to play and have fun and be a kid anymore. And we don't get that scene. And it's like, that's his whole fucking arc. So then Aang runs away, and that's like pretty much the same in both versions. We see the air nomads get fucking genocided in this version. I think which is fine. it is kind of there is kind of a threateningness to them, to seeing the Fire Nation like murder people, which we only really hear about in the original show and see like some of the effects of. But to see them like cook people alive, it's pretty brutal. But like in a live action thing, I've seen worse. In a Nickelodeon kids cartoon, just implying that kind of stuff actually feels darker to me. Maybe because you're not expecting it necessarily. Right after you watch SpongeBob, then you see like, oh, Aang walks in and sees the skeleton of his father figure and realizes that his entire people have been genocided. Like that just kind of hits harder when it's in a cartoon form. Like arguably, I'm just arguing that it's dark. It's more dark because it's a cartoon, but like kind of. I don't know, because this show is already. I guess because this show doesn't have. I don't know. It's maybe because it's also like they do that right up front. So then, I don't know. Maybe it was more shocking when I didn't know what was gonna happen. As you know, as a child watching this for the first time. When now I've already seen it, so there's nothing that can surprise me. So even though they like murder people on screen, it doesn't really do much for me. Also, the Fire Nation like don't feel that powerful. We see like Sozin do like a cup show up at the Air Nomad genocide, which even that is like, was he there personally? I don't know. Doesn't really matter. But like everything he does doesn't really feel, there's only like one or two moves that feel kind of extra powerful, and really like it does show that the Fire Nation is like threatening because they can bend fire. But there's nothing really that we're shown that feels like the extra comet level firebending that we see in the original series. Part of the reason that that the Fire Nation was able to like kick off this 100-year war and do a genocide effectively is because they had this power of this comet that only shows up every 100 years and gives firebenders this like crazy power boost. We see some like insane firebending in the, when the comet shows up again in the show, and like we don't really see that level of firebending here, which is like why I'm like, I bet Aang could fucking take them, because if that's their like boosted top level firebending, comet enhanced firebending, I bet Aang could take him. I bet he could take him now. I don't think he needs any other elements. And that's the first time that we see the firebending, and it's like, you know, it's pretty threatening. They kill a bunch of people, but it's not the level that it is in the original show. So now knowing that that's their top, that's their max, that's the ceiling on firebending, it makes like when you come across regular firebenders, like who cares? Like they're not that strong. Aang can fly around. They're not a threat. Jumping around a bit here. There is a moment that I do really like between Iroh and Aang, which is a combination of characters we really don't see very much of. And this is a scene that is not in the show, and in the original show, and I actually really liked it. Iroh comes to greet, like to say hello to Aang when they capture him and put him onto Zuko's ship. And he has this like interesting conversation with Aang. Aang's like, because Aang's still trying to figure out like why the war is even happened at all. And he asks Iroh about it, and Iroh gives him this like interesting and thoughtful answer about, he doesn't like fully answer the question straight out, but it's interesting. He says something along the lines of like, well, some people say that like fire, it is in our nature, just like fire, to destroy and to conquer. Other people say that our will to dominate is the only thing that can bring true peace, by bringing the glory of the Fire Nation to the rest of the world. And then Aang asks him about like, well, what do you believe about this war? And Iroh kind of doesn't fully answer. He doesn't quite like fully commit either way to how much he's on board with the Fire Nation. It's interesting, and it like kind of lets you think about like what his motivations are. And he says something like, we're already in the war, So now my goal is to end the war. That's how we achieve peace. And it's played very well. It's actually a well-written scene, unlike a lot of the other scenes here. We get a character not just saying exactly how they feel, which is like most of the other scenes in this show, and we get it from Iroh, who's a really interesting and complex character, as we know from the original. I was not fully on board with Iroh's portrayal, and I think it's portrayal. And I think it's just that his voice is different. In the original, I was going to look this up. In the original, Iroh is voiced by Mako, the late great Mako. What the fuck is he? Mako, who is a Japanese actor. So he has like a fairly thick Japanese accent. And he's one of the only characters in Avatar that does have like a distinct Asian accent, despite like the majority of the characters being Asian influenced. It's not really a one-to-one, because it's like it's the Fire Nation, who are kind of Japan, but you know, they're the Fire Nation, so they're not exactly Japan, but kind of. Same with the other nations. But that's just how like the actor sounds. So that's just like part of his voice. And in my mind, his voice is like, that's the character. That was a big part, one of the big things that like threw me for a lot of this show, is that like stuff looks like the original, but the actors sound different because they're different actors. And so I'm like, that's not how that character sounds, but it's just because it's a different actor. And I should have looked up the new guy. So forgive my pronunciation, but Paul Sun Hyung Lee plays Iroh in the new show, and he's the main guy from Kim's Convenience. He's Mr. Kim, and in that show he has like a thick, kind of exaggerated Korean accent because he's playing a Korean character. But in real life, I think he's a Canadian actor, so he just has a like North American accent. And that's what he's doing in this show, which threw me because I'm like, no, Iroh needs to be Asian. He needs to have an Asian accent, but it like technically it should be fine because the rest of the characters have American accents, you know. But it kind of threw me, and I don't know if I'm okay, if I like it. I guess I was just expecting him to do a different voice, and he just kind of does his real life voice. So, and also he's an actor who I think is really well cast. He's a really good actor. He's got really great comedic chops, but he can do dramatic stuff as well, which is kind of perfect for Iroh. And so he was one that I was expecting to like, and I didn't right away. So I don't know. I thought that scene with him was really good, but I'm worried that he's not quite as strong as I think he could be, which is strange because Zuko, I think, is like pretty much spot on. So I don't know. But like, oh, there's like so many little things that are like, oh, why did they not include that? That's too bad. Like, we see, just like in the original show, Zuko's briefly practicing his firebending on the way to try to capture Aang. And we get like almost the same thing where Iroh's like kind of instructing him, except that they cut out the part where Iroh tells you the whole philosophy of firebending. Firebending comes from the breath. It's not just about the motions, it's about breathing in tune with it. It's because it comes from the dragons, which we learn about later on in the series. It's not just rage and anger, it's life itself. There's like fucking philosophy behind the martial art that is also the magic system. It's not just, look, he shoots fire, isn't that cool? Which is basically what it is in this. He's just like, he's shooting, Zuko's does some firebending, and I was like, yep, you're doing great. Good job. I'm like, no, Zuko is supposed to be kind of bad at firebending. It's like, just like, and they get to like the other beat, which is like Iroh kind of pushing Zuko away from what Zuko wants is to capture the Avatar to restore his honor and redeem himself in the eyes of his father. At least that's what he thinks. And Iroh's kind of try to push Zuko away from that because like his father's the guy who fucking scarred him and banished him and abused him in the first place. And like, it's actually probably a good thing that he's away from that guy. And they get to that, they like cover that stuff, which is important. But this is the world of Avatar is people that could bend elements. That's the whole fucking hook. So like, show me the philosophy and the training that it takes to learn how to bend the elements. Yeah, there's some weird stuff with Sokka and Katara's relationship as well. This came out in like an interview or something, which I didn't end up reading. But Sokka is less sexist. Basically not sexist at all, at least so far. I haven't seen the second episode, which is the Kyoshi Warrior episode, which in the original show is the one where like he learns to not be sexist. This is it reeks of like, oh, we're afraid of having an unlikable main character protagonist, so we're gonna like tone down his unlikable aspects, but without any thought whatsoever into like why that stuff was there in the first place. And like in the original show, when we first meet Sokka, he's kind of annoying. He's kind of an asshole. He's kind of misogynistic. And these are all character flaws. And then Sokka learns very fucking quickly that he is wrong about most things, especially about the way the world works, and especially about women. He learns Sokka in like episode 3 of the original show literally has to wear a dress and makeup in order to learn how to respect women. It's like the most blatantly anti-misogynistic, like feminist, woke ass arc you could possibly have. It's like so overt and in your face, you can't possibly miss it. So the fact that they're like not like, maybe he's a little, I don't know, I haven't seen the next one yet, so, and I don't know if I want to, because this one made me very mad. But the fact that he's not sexist in the first episode, well, then what does he have to learn? And that's like Sokka's whole fucking arc. It's like learning that women are worthy of respect. So like, what's his arc here? I don't see one. And the way that it's done here, it like actively they change up some of the dialogue, I guess, to make Sokka less sexist, but it actively makes like his and Katara's relationship worse when you think about it at all. Okay, so like in the live action one, Sokka has a line about how he's like, Katara, I don't want you waterbending, because if the Fire Nation found out that you're a waterbender, they'll take you away. And then Katara's like, oh, but I want to learn waterbending. In the original show, Sokka is like, Katara, don't fucking do waterbending. It's magic and scary and witchcraft, and I hate it, and I always end up getting wet whenever you try it. I'm personally inconvenienced whenever you try to do something cool. So don't. Sokka is kind of an asshole. And if you think about it further, you understand like why Sokka's like that and like why they wrote it that way. Sokka and Katara's mother died when they were both very young, and their dad sailed off to war along with the rest of the men in the village, in their very small village in the South Pole. So Sokka is like 15 probably, and he's the oldest man in this isolated village, and he's been charged with protecting it from the Fire Nation, who they are at war with. The only other boys in the village are like under 10, super young. He's trying to train them to be warriors, but they're little kids. And Sokka is kind of sexist because he's trying to live up to what his father is, who is this like masculine man's man who's going off to war to try to defend the homeland. And Sokka is trying to like emulate that. So he puts on this bravado of being really strong and masculine, and he takes it a little too far. Also, like, if you think about this, if you think about it as the showrunners did of the original show, Sokka wasn't born sexist. No one is. And as we learned from the Northern Water Tribe later on in the first season, the Water Tribes, both of them, are kind of sexist. They have a bunch of outdated misogynistic practices. When they finally get to the North Pole, and Katara is super excited to learn waterbending, which has been her goal the entire first season, they're like, "Oh no, we don't teach women waterbending. That's not allowed." And then they have to like spend a whole episode proving why that's fucking dumb. But it's also really interesting because, hey, look at that. The waterbenders, the water tribes, the good guys, their society is also flawed and not perfect, much like real life. How most societies are not perfect, and look at that. The patriarchy exists even in the water tribe. And then they fucking like spend the whole time learning how wrong that is. It's like very blatant and overt. But like it's like, but of course Sokka is kind of sexist because he was raised in this very specific environment, isolated from the rest of the world. The only women he knows are his grandma, who's old, his mom, who is dead, and his younger sister Katara, who is trying to become magic and powerful, but Sokka can't be magic and do waterbending. And so like he finds it scary. He finds it threatening that a woman is objectively more powerful than he is. He's supposed to be the most powerful person in charge of protecting their village, and Katara, mostly by accident, can do crazy magic shit. So he's like condescending to her. He's an asshole to her. It's also just kind of like sibling shit where you get on each other's nerves. It happens. But it's like, it's all there for like very specific reasons. But in the new show, where Sokka should be coming off as like condescending and misogynistic and like a bit of a dick, instead he comes off as just like overprotective, and like he doesn't want Katara to like openly practice waterbending because he knows it puts her in danger. So he's actually got like a point. But it's also like stupid. It doesn't really make sense, because later we find out that like in the original show, he's trying to train up the other like children in this village. But we see that he's like not just training not just the men, but he's training not just the men, but the women too, and the children too. So there's like girls there also that he's like training to be warriors. So like it's not a misogynistic thing. So it doesn't really make sense, because Katara specifically is also like, I want to learn waterbending. I want to like learn our culture and I want to become like a warrior and like help protect and fight for the people who can't fight for themselves. So like Sokka should be all about that. If he's not misogynistic, which apparently he's not, then why doesn't he want a magic user on his like in his like small band of warriors that he's trying to train? That's like that's a huge advantage. It's weird. It's a change that like you on surface level should be fine, but then if you think about it at all, it like actively makes stuff make less sense. It's like, so again, so it's like, well, why change it then? And that's like that's like a lot of the stuff here is they change stuff a little bit and now it's worse. Like towards the end of the episode, there's a moment that is very similar to a moment from the original show where Aang gets captured by Zuko, and Katara and Sokka are like, we can't just let him get captured for the sake of our village. He was, he tried to protect us. We should try to protect him. And Sokka reluctantly agrees. And they're like, okay, let's go after him. How are we going to catch Zuko in his like steamship? We just have all we have is a canoe. And then Katara's like, well, I know. And this is in the live action one. Katara's like, I know. What if we don't take the canoe? And then they smash cut to them flying on Appa. How the fuck did they know how to fly on Appa? In the original show, when they first meet Aang in the iceberg, they also meet Appa. And they don't know who Aang is or what his deal is yet. They don't know that what Appa is and that he can fly. Aang's like, this is my flying bison, Appa. And then Sokka's like, I don't believe you. And then Aang's like, watch this, yip yip. And then Appa does not fly. And Aang's like, he's probably just tired. And Sokka's like, I don't believe you. Which is like, fair enough. That's a pretty big claim and so far Sokka has not seen any evidence that Appa even can fly. Then later on in that episode, they choose to go after Aang. Same thing with the live action version, and they're like, let's take Appa since he's probably faster than our canoe at the very least. And then they like do a bit where like Katara's trying to talk to Appa and be like, come on, fly, we need to go get Aang. And Sokka's like, what was that thing that kid said? Yeehaw, yahoo, yip yip. And then Appa flies, and us, the viewer, for the first time with Katara and Sokka, see Appa fly for the first time. And it's also the reveal that Appa actually can fly, and it's cool. In the new show, they don't do that. They show we see Appa flying earlier because we have the flashback of Aang in the air temple at the very start of the show. So we already know that Appa can fly around. That's not the problem. The problem is that instead of taking Appa back with Aang, they take Aang back first, and then later Appa like flies in and shows up with them. But they don't see Aang fly around on Appa. They don't see him say yip yip. They don't see like how to do that. So then we just like smash cut to them flying on Appa without any like they've never flown on anything before. They've never even seen anyone fly on a flying bison before. So how the fuck did they fly a flying bison? I don't know. Like it's like a little minor change. It's a little minor change that theoretically shouldn't really be that big of a deal. But it's like actively worse because it makes less sense. There's no like, why do they know how do they know how to do that? On top of that, it's also like done for a specific reason. It's like we're revealing information to the audience at the same time the characters learn that information. So it's like interesting. Like it's also just kind of like less interesting to know that Aang is the Avatar right out the gate. I guess it puts us in Aang's shoes, but it's like it's done for a specific reason. In the original show, it's done like that because we start off with just a dude and a lady in a canoe, and one of them can move water, and that's like all we know. And then we meet this other dude in an iceberg. That's pretty strange. Oh, maybe it turns out he's an airbender. That's pretty strange. Oh, it turns out he's also the Avatar. That's pretty crazy. Now we're on this big adventure. Like, it starts out small scale, and then, like, we get an initiating event, and then things, like, pick up. Starting with Aang, we already know everything about him at the start, so it, like, the reveal of information feels, like, off. Like, there's a part where Gran is just like, you're not just an airbender, you're the Avatar. And it's like, that's a pretty fucking big leap to make. A Gran, like, yeah, I buy that you would be the one to recognize that he's an airbender. I think that's in the original show too, but there's a big jump from this dude's the last airbender to this dude is the Avatar. Like and there's like very little information to make her think that. Maybe she saw the big glowing blue laser and that's like what tipped her off. But if that's I don't think they showed her seeing that, so. That's like, you know, that they should have, because that might have tipped her off. So it's just the way they reveal information feels off. There's another thing too, again with Aang's whole thing about being a kid versus being the Avatar. When Aang first wakes up and sees Katara, the first thing he asks her is, "Do you want to go penguin sledding with me?" And she's like, sure? Because that's all Aang wants to do, is just hang out with other kids and be a kid and have fun. And then we get a scene of them penguin sledding again, and we get this great line from Katara of, I haven't done this since I was a kid. And Aang's like, you still are a kid. You could still have fun. And it's part of Aang's arc of wanting to be a kid versus having to be the Avatar. But it also is part of the first season's emphasis on the importance of fun and having room for it and having room to be a child, which is a luxury that is taken away from the majority of our characters. Tara lost her mother at a very young age, and because her dad went off to war, she had to become the mother of her household, even though she's the youngest one in her family. So because of this war that's going on, Katara has had to grow up really fast and kind of forgotten how to be a kid again. And Aang helps her see that. Aang's positivity and optimism and want for joy actually becomes crucial in restoring hope, which is the other big part of him being the Avatar, is that he gives people hope again. This is also echoed when Zuko first shows up, because Zuko's because they're okay, Iroh's I mean, it's possible that the Avatar might be alive theoretically. It's extremely unlikely, and it's been 100 years since anyone has heard of the Avatar at all. So if the Avatar is still alive, he's probably really fucking old, and he'll be a master, and he'll be hard to beat. So when Zuko first arrives at the village, he's looking for Aang. He's I'm looking for the Avatar. He might be he's probably an airbender. He'll be fucking old. And he points at Gran, who's the oldest one there, and he's probably about her age. And then Aang shows up, and he's here I am, I'm the Avatar. And Zuko's what? You're a child. You're just a kid. And Aang responds, well, you're just a teenager. And again, Zuko also 16 probably, and had to grow up fucking fast when his dad fucking burned his face. And yeah, turns out that makes your childhood not very fun. So again, another character that had to grow up quickly because of the trauma of the war. And it's also a really interesting moment of Zuko's expecting this old Grand Master, but instead it's this little tiny kid who also is able to defeat him. It completely changes what Zuko's perspective of what the Avatar is going to be. They skip over that beat for some reason in the live action show. For some reason, he's not even surprised that Aang's just a child, which he should be. He saw the Boo laser, so he knows that some Avatar shenanigans are going on. Then Aang's here I am, I'm the Avatar. And Zuko's not you're a child. What are you talking about? You should be 100 years old. They skip over that beat. He's not surprised to see him for some. It's they just didn't think about why certain beats are there. I don't know. It's weird. It's just actively a little bit worse whenever they change or get rid of something. So yeah, I just kept the more I thought about it, the more angry I got, because I'm why didn't you just, if you're already trying to be fairly faithful by most of the beats being there, but you're not thinking about why it was written that way. It's strange. I don't understand why they didn't think about it. And I guess we just aren't allowed to have nice things. And Avatar, a show where the writers are good and they thought about why they were writing it a specific way, we just don't get that very often. We just aren't allowed to have good things. It's one of those I don't know what I expected, where am I really angry at this show? I don't know. Who am I angry at? Who am I really angry at? I'm angry at myself watching it and for getting my hopes up a little bit. And I don't know. I guess if it was just an awful disaster, I could at least laugh at it. But because it's it's like close. It's like close to being good. It's like more annoying. And it also made me go like, oh man, I could be watching the original show. I could just be watching the original show. I think that's it. I think the original show, so good, so well done. Everything has a purpose for being there. Great characters, very well made. And that's not even to like comment on like the animation, which is phenomenal, and the action in the show, in the original show, which is so good. The action here was like, I don't know, it happened. I don't remember any of it. It should be really cool. And there's like some moments where we get some bending that looks kind of cool, but it's not like, I don't remember any like specific action beats or any specific like moments or like shots, where I do from the original show. The original show is fucking so good. So anyway, I had to yell about this show and why it's not as good. I don't know what I expected. I feel like Zuko having finally come home to the Fire Nation and not understanding why I expected this to be the thing that I wanted. I really don't want to watch more. I mean, unless this is entertaining to you. Is this entertaining? Are you entertained? You pissed me off. Good work, show. Am I pissed off enough? I just like, I can't, I just don't want to, I just like, I'm no longer curious to see how they're going to adapt certain things, because I'm just like, it's just going to be slightly worse. I don't know what I expected. I don't know why I thought there would be anything more. I guess I'm just like, I'm also kind of just disappointed, because it feels like there's a lot of people involved in this show that like worked hard and they spent money on it, and it's like, why write another draft? And all the pieces are right there. So it's like, how are they fucking up this kind of stuff? It's like really simple. Ugh, I don't know. I'm tired now. Anyways, I'll probably just go back and rewatch the original show, even though I literally just rewatched it in preparation for this. Yeah, tell me what you think. Did you watch it? I did. I didn't. I wish I didn't. I don't know. I just like talking about Avatar, and I wanted to be part of the conversation. And then I regretted it because it was not very good. And it could have been good. It could have been, all the pieces are literally right there. It's just take the things, just take the thing that's already there. It's not that hard. Write better. Thank you for watching. I'll be back next time with something else. I don't know what, but it'll be something. See ya.